Captain, we have them. We've established Transporter Lock, the Star Trek Discovery podcast. Join Ken and Sabriel each week as they explore strange new episodes, seek out new plots and new characters, and boldly go where no podcast has gone before.
Hello and welcome to Transporter Lock episode number 109 for Friday, June 3rd, 2022.
I'm your co-host, Chief Engineer Ken Gaddy, and I'm joined by my captain.
It's Captain Sabriel Maston.
Today, we are back and in Pog form.
Pog?
It's a very old Simpsons reference. Don't worry about it.
This past week, not only did I watch the new Sonic the Hedgehog movie, I also saw the new Chippendale movie, which, as did you.
Yeah, with Ugly Sonic, or whatever it was called.
Yeah, but it had Pogs. And that was a key point of the story. And so I wasn't sure if there were also Pogs in Star Trek.
Nope. There may have been Star Trek Pogs, but nope.
Gotcha.
But anyway, we're back.
We are here to talk about Strange New Worlds. The first episode, the pilot episode, was reviewed on this podcast, and we are here with Sabriel making her Strange New Worlds debut to talk about Strange New Worlds season 1 episodes. Yeah, we may skip over some of episode 1 just because it's already been covered on the show, but certainly episodes 2 through 5. So that includes Children of the Comet, Ghosts of Illyria, Memento Mori, and most recently, Spock-Amok.
Spock-Amok.
Yes,
that's
clearly
a say.
It is kind of like Bulbous Beluga.
I feel like I'm doing hijinks with my mouth when I say Spock-Amok.
Sometimes hijinks is the most logical choice. So yeah, we have a lot to talk about. Strange New Worlds. We are now halfway through the season. Sabriel, may I ask for your general impressions of this brand new Star Trek show that just debuted a month ago?
I would like to counter that with asking you that. That's just my question.
You want my opinion on the first half of the new season?
Yeah, I like to ask that. What's your very, very one word or so summary of how you feeling just in general?
Promising.
The same here. Love, joy, so happy. To go extend that further now, I've gotten that out of the way. I love Strange New Worlds so much. This is, wow. Every episode I walk away like they nailed it again.
Wow.
I have loved every episode. 5 out of 5 stars. 95 to 100 out of 95 to 100. Whatever. It is. Wait, that doesn't really make sense. But you get the idea. I have loved every single bit of the show so much.
I remember you tweeted after the first episode that you loved that Star Trek could give you reasons to be optimistic. Has that feeling continued?
I love this show.
Yeah?
Yeah, everything about the show. The dramatic Star Trek, the seasons, the Discovery and Picard have been very dramatic. And it's always been about huge galaxy-changing things, And finally we get something, like big events, but, it's just, I don't know how to put it. I mean, if you've seen the show, you know exactly what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I appreciate that the pressure is off to save all of known existence. And that also gives the characters more time to have fun. I mean, there have been times when Picard or Discovery had a little bit of fun here and there. It's kind of sad that I need to keep going back to the first season of Discovery when there have been so many seasons since then. And the Groundhog Day episode, which I think was the funniest or funnest episode of Discovery. But yeah, more often than not, it's pretty dour. And Strange New Worlds, especially with the Captain and Nurse Chapel and other characters, they're a little more lighthearted.
So already in like the first episode or two of Strange New Worlds, I already felt like I knew the crew. And and then never mind that we already have a few characters who are repeat, but like even the new people, I feel like I am a part of the crew. They are the family. They are the people I tune in to see what they're doing every week, just like the original series or Next Gen or anything like that. I just feel so at home with this crew, and I love the hell out of this show.
I like that it not being a serial show like the others also like, apparently this hasn't happened for you yet, but it allows them the flexibility and freedom to experiment and perhaps have a bad episode. Like with Picard, if there's a bad episode, it probably means the next episode isn't going to be great either, because it has to tie into it. But with Strange New Worlds, they could just go and do something completely different next week. And I'm like, okay, I'm still looking forward to this show.
For me, Strange New Worlds has just shown me, because it's not that Discovery and Picard are bad in the way they present their shows. That is not what I'm trying to say. So I don't want anyone to walk away with that, because they do their thing well. I mean, there are plenty of episodes of those shows that we have loved or enjoyed or appreciated. But here, I've gotten so much out of these characters and characters that are new to this in just the few episodes we have already, where I know their names in the first episode or two, where we still struggle with Discovery. And here we get so much personality. We've learned just what these people are like, even if we don't know their past. Where how often do we get that in Disco? And Picard can rely on the legacy of shows had 7 years beforehand. They just do what they do very well, and I hope the other shows can do it their own way, but take some notes here that you can have compelling stories for the characters in a single episode.
I will say it's almost convenient that almost every episode of Strange New Worlds so far, each week ties into a different character's backstory.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, here's a comet that needs somebody to know how to sing. Cadet Ahura knows how to sing. Here's the Ghost of Illyria. Oh, she's Illyrian. Here's Memento Mori. Oh, this person was attacked by the Gorn. So that is a very effective way to introduce us to the characters and make them more well-rounded and more fully fleshed out. And that's perhaps why you feel like we get to know them so much better and quicker than on other shows.
Yeah, I mean, Discovery also has a thing where it's a show about Michael Burnham.
Right.
Everyone else's edition. And that's, like I said, that's their thing. And Picard. I mean, we knew all these characters, almost all these characters. Well, I mean, that's not really true. We had Rios is brand new. Girardi's brand new.
I think just Seven and Picard.
Yeah. So, but they're also telling story their own way, because it's about Picard more than anyone else. Everyone else is just adding to him. So those shows do their own thing in their own way. But man, I just love the characters here so much more than new ones. Even though I love Rios, I love Girardi.
You love Seven.
I love Raffi. Of course, I love Seven. That's known. It's just doing some amazing things here, and I'm just loving the hell out of it.
Yeah, and even for the characters that we know on Strange New Worlds from previous shows, like number one, we only ever really saw her in one episode. Dr. Mbenga, I'll be honest, as I've said before on this podcast, TOS is the only Star Trek I haven't seen every episode of. I don't remember ever seeing him before. Nurse Chapel, she wasn't really an important character, in my opinion, from what I remember on TOS, was she?
She was in a few episodes, and then she was brought back for the films, but she never had... She was an essential part to a few, but not like the major player. She had a thing for Spock. It's basically her known thing.
Okay, I was wondering.
Maybe that'll add context for Spock and Muck.
It does help, thank you. I was thinking of Nurse Chapel as being as important on TOS as Nurse Ogawa was to TNG. Is that about right?
That's probably not too far off.
Yeah.
I mean, she had her own screen time here and there, but in general, very in general. I mean, you're going to have someone who has varying opinion, but yeah.
Got it. Thank you. May I ask if you have a favorite character on Strange New Worlds?
Every week it's a different answer. I thought about this actually in the past. Like every week it's a different answer. And so, but I think if anyone who has followed my Twitter has seen, I have a weekly Una appreciation tweet, because I love number one so much. I loved her before Strange New World started. I love Rebecca Romaine as Una so much. And so I love her. I love how Rebecca plays her. I love her always needing to know the answers, always being ready, but it's a personal thing. Not anyone has set expectations on her. She always has the answer. And I just love how this character bounces off everyone else. And I also love her motherly type relationship with La'an. So yeah. And especially like this week in Spock and Muck. those two playing on the Enterprise, trying to have fun. So we are not where fun dies. Fun goes to die. That was so much. That was a blast.
Did you see that Rebecca Romaine retweeted me?
I did not.
Yeah, I posted my own little appreciation note about her,
Was it
about how
the Mystique one?
yeah. And she retweeted it, and the retweet got, let me see here, 264 retweets, 5,251 likes.
You got a lot of internet points.
Well, of course, that's on her account. That's the retweet. My tweet only got like 215 likes, which for me is a lot. So I don't expect everybody who follows Rebecca Romaine to come back to my own little account. But yeah, I was glad that I was able to be noticed by her because she's a great actor. And I'm glad that my appreciation for her was appreciated.
There's a great interview with the one who plays Artegas. I'm drawing a complete blank right now, of course, because of bringing up her name, I had it and tipped my tongue. But anyway,
Navia?
Yes. She put in an article about how she gets so into her character and quote unquote flying the ship that sometimes she will miss lines, and people like line. She's like, "What? Quit bothering me! I'm flying the ship. I got more important things to do." The hope was so much fun that these actors have been showing on Twitter has been a joy to watch too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you have a favorite episode so far?
Every episode as it comes out. I think so far, gosh, I have difficulty answering that one. Momentum Mori last week's was a highlight. I did love La'an. But like this, see, I can pull something out of each one that I just loved. So I don't know if I can answer that. I love them all. How about you?
I would say I have two favorites. One is Memento Mori. I really loved almost reminded me of the TOS episode you and I watched, the Enterprise incident. No, Balance of Terror, where they are. So good. Yeah, it's like a submarine almost. And I love them going through this nebula where they can't see each other. There's no radar and no sensors, as Vulcan would say, sensors. And yeah, I just thought that was a really tense episode, and I liked that. I liked the chances Chris took with his ship. And I liked Children of the Comet. I thought it was fun. Susan Arndt pointed out to me that, of course, within the first 10 minutes, Sam Kirk is knocked out unconscious.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We haven't seen him since.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. But I just thought that was a fun episode. I liked seeing Uhura find her way. I liked how they had to deal with the alien species that was protecting the comet. But yeah, I would say those are my two favorites.
I haven't gotten enough Hemmer.
Yeah, I'm sure he's going to have an episode coming up. Everybody does. But yeah, I can't get a read on him yet.
Read in what way?
Well, like in the very first episode, he and Spock were, maybe it was the second episode.
He wasn't even in the first episode.
That's right. In the second episode, he and Spock were hazing Uhura, and I really couldn't tell how much of his attitude there was something he was just putting on to haze her, or if he actually was that much of a curmudgeon. After Memento Mori, I get a better sense that he is a curmudgeon, but I'm still not sure how likable he is.
He doesn't take to people quickly, probably intentionally for whatever reason. I got a kick out of him in Ghosts of Illyria when he is got the light virus, and Una pops into the transporter room and she's like, "What are you doing?" "I'm performing a miracle." He's beaming part of the sun or core into the transporter room.
Yeah.
I am just so flatly, "I'm performing a miracle."
And he had the intelligence and brilliance to actually do that, which is impressive.
Yeah. Lieutenant Kyle is great too. Every episode he has like one line, and like this one he's like, he's so mean.
Yeah, I caught that. Oh, not he's the worst. No. Now I need you, or I don't need you. I would appreciate if you would explain something I read online about him. The character, not the actor. Somebody said, "Oh my gosh, I love Kyle. He's my favorite twink."
That is a gay term. I'm trying to be as clean as I can for this podcast. Softer side of gay men.
Okay,
I would say that.
cool.
Not necessarily, but in general.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. Uh-huh. Or if you play World of Warcraft, you're a low level person in PvP. But
I'm sure I could have looked that up on Urban Dictionary, but I thought it'd be more fun to discuss on the podcast. So thank you.
I tried.
I mean, I understood from context that it was a positive thing, at least in the mind of the person who said it. So I was just curious. Thank you. I will say my least favorite episode was The Ghost of Illyria for two reasons. One is, number one has been this character that has been in beta canon for decades. And there have been theories about whether or not she's even human. And I was disappointed to find out 3 episodes into the entire series that she isn't. I thought that would have been something that they would keep in their back pocket longer.
See, that was something from beta canon that she's Illyrian.
Oh, I didn't know that specifically. I'm not surprised to learn that, but I still thought that's cool. I think it's neat when they pull from beta canon, like the animated series, which they've done often. But I just thought that they would make us wait longer to find out.
Why? How about this then? Why do you? Okay, did you feel like they should have waited? Or that they like what was a disappointment? Or was it disappointment? Or you thought they needed to wait for some reason?
Well, consider when we found out that Bashir was genetically enhanced. That happened several seasons into Deep Space Nine, and I thought that really added a lot of depth to a character who we thought we already knew, and it also cast previous episodes in a new light. And by telling us this about Una so early, it does neither of those things.
Did you? So you were expecting that going into the show?
No, I didn't expect specifically to find out Una's race or species, but I thought that if we were to find out, it would not be immediately.
And so you wanted to have. So the question is, like President said, question is not questioning. And so it's like you would have wanted them to do a bunch of stuff and then go, aha, we could change her in a few episodes or seasons. We can make it so we can add new context. Because the Bashir, they didn't know that he was going to be genetically engineered. They just made that up well into the show. And so like, you wanted them, I mean, like you kind of like wanted them to have a really cool character, and then you could have a moment a few years from now and go, aha, for another character.
I think I prefer it when the directors or the writers know going into the series who the characters are, even if they don't tell us right away. Like take for example Firefly, which I know didn't run for very long, but Shepherd Book, like they hinted at things about him that we never found out the truth about. And I expect that had the show continued, we would not have found out until at least season 3. And I prefer that approach to parceling out these morsels, these secrets.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
See, I was like, okay, cool. I get to find more about my favorite character. So,
but also, I think my reaction was exacerbated by the fact that that's the same episode where we found out about Dr. Mbenga's daughter,
which is the only.
I just felt like it was too many character secrets being revealed in one episode.
So, like, one is the right amount.
I think so.
This is again not me picking on you. This is me trying to pull something out from that. See, for me, the only thing about Mbenga's daughter being in there is like there's been no mention or like it feels like it felt like in that episode they're going to make it a bigger thing, and we've only been 2 episodes since then, so it's not been a lot of time. But like we've seen them using that transporter sense. We've seen the power go out and momentum of Mori. You know, like it felt like there's something that they were like. So this is totally my expectation because clearly she's okay in there. She's hiding, and so we don't need to worry about her. And he doesn't just pull her out to see, hey, are you okay? Are all your 1s and 0s still there? It's like. So clearly, her little checkoff thing is okay for now. We don't need to worry about it until we're told to. But it doesn't mean I don't think about it. That's like the only thing I think about between episodes is like, well, is she okay? Like even the gum scene in Spock Amok, like reflavoring the gum, which is really funny. But I was thinking about like, is she gonna appear? Like, what's gonna happen? So yeah, it's not something I need an answer to, and I don't expect one, but it's always on my mind. Specifically because they made it seem like it's gonna be something that matters.
Yeah, that is an accurate description to how I approach a lot of Star Trek. Like, it raises a lot of questions, and I'm okay with questions. For example, we saw in the 4th season of Discovery the entire crew go into the transporter buffer to avoid radiation. And we saw, of course, Scotty do that in the Relics episode from TNG, and now we've seen Mbenga's daughter do it. But not more often than that. And you would think that if this was a valid medical practice to like prevent people from progressing in their condition until they're able to get to a safe place, we would see it more often, and we haven't. And I'm sure that there are risks or concerns, like if the power goes out, of course, but it seems like it should be a valid emergency option.
And maybe it's one of those things that happens off air, more often.
Nothing important
right,
ever
but you're
happens off
right.
air. Otherwise, it'd be an
It's true.
episode. I remember in the John Scalzi book, Red Shirts, people were like, "Isn't it weird how stuff happens on this ship only like every Saturday?"
That's like my D&D crew. I'm playing a campaign right now. It's a pre-written one. That takes place at his college, and of course, all the events are written to happen to the party. And one of them made a comment. It's like, isn't it weird? Like, everything only happens to us? Like, does this kind of stuff happening to everybody else? And the next week, taking their words and turning around back at them, I had some of the professors go, some of the professors are questioning like why you're always the one who these events are happening to, kind of like in Harry Potter, what she said, like, why is it always you three?
Right.
And they got so offended when I turned their words back on them, like, I can't believe they'd accuse us of this. I'm like, they didn't say accusing. They were curious. And they're like, oh my God. I'm like, last week you guys just said, and now
I remember I had a Shakespeare professor in college, and I had just finished reading, I forget the name of the book. It's the TNG episode or TNG book where they go to the Mirror Universe. And at one point, our Captain Picard is in the Mirror Captain Picard's quarters, and he finds the Shakespeare novel Merchant of Venice. And he picks it up and he reads a page from it, and it's Mirror Shakespeare. And so I brought it to my Shakespeare professor and I showed it to her.
Is it everything happy and everything's good and everything?
No, it was, I don't remember Shakespeare that well, but it was like a pound of flesh for a pound of flesh or something. I never read that particular play, I'm sorry. But I brought it to her and she found that passage from Merchant of Venice fascinating, but she was also like, I don't understand. Is this the novelization of an episode? And I'm like, no, it's an entirely new adventure. She's like, but it was a TV show. The TV show's not based on a book, is it? I'm like, no, this is its own adventure. She's like, I don't understand. Like, where does this story come from? She said. I was like, well, you know how the Enterprise goes on adventure every Saturday? So like there are 6 other days in the week, and these books show what happened in between the TV shows. That's the best way I could think of to explain it. She's like, huh, I never thought of that. Like, she just thought the Enterprise went right from one mission to the next, and there was
like
nothing.
Discovery.
Right. Oh.
So yeah. So Children of the Comet.
Yes.
I saw a video clip of them actually. Like, I thought the people who were protecting the comet all this time, I thought it was all CGI, but it turned out no, it's actually a person under there. They actually had a set, like a headpiece for him with some CGI adjustments afterwards. But I was impressed by that. I thought it was all CGI. Yeah, it's just like I saw the name here. It made me think of that because that was just really impressive to me.
Oh, you know what? I had forgotten what they looked like, so I just did a Google image search. And when you were talking about it, I was like, gee, I don't remember them being CGI. But now I looked them up. I was like, oh, yeah, I totally did think that was CGI.
Yeah.
Huh.
I might have done some touch-ups here, but yeah, for the most part, totally real. Like makeup.
Wow. That's cool.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Although, actually, you know what? Let me ask you this. Even though we are of like mind, why is it cool that it's a real person and not CGI?
To me, this has been a discussion lately in online as well, the CGI versus practical. Because CGI kind of gets a bad rap. And this came up because of Thor, Love and Thunder, and how like even helmets on people's heads is CGI, and it's very obvious in the commercials. And so that's where the discussion started. Because sometimes the CGI done poorly can make something look terrible. Look at Hulkbuster at the end of part 1 of Infinity War, whatever the first Endgame, whatever the first one of those two. It looked terrible with CGI Mark Ruffalo's head bouncing around on top of it. And so CGI can take people out of the scene, bad CGI. And so, and I've always kind of like appreciated it. And just personally, because I grew up in the 80s and 90s, I like the practical effects. Not that CGI is bad. And so, I'm not saying it. So I was just surprised that this was actually practical, because expecting they just put so much CG in Star Trek these days because it's cheaper. And so I was surprised to see it wasn't, because it had that look, right? It looked uncanny.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So,
yeah.
This reminds me of the new Rescue Rangers movie when they found themselves in the valley.
That was such a great one. For anyone who hasn't seen it yet, that's the Uncanny Valley, referencing where CGI were from like the mid 2000s, early 2000s, like kind of like think Shrek, where anime figures didn't, or even the Final Fantasy movie.
Yep.
Where figures don't look like they're quite looking at what they're supposed to be looking at, or they don't have all the expressions and emotions that you can do now.
Yep.
With our computer power.
I just want to say one more thing about that movie, Rescue Rangers. One of my favorite things about that movie was how many forms of animation they used. Like you could have in one scene a hand-drawn cartoon character, a CGI character, claymation, and a puppet all interacting with each other.
It was fantastic.
That was just technically impressive. I mean, I loved the plot too, but the technical impressiveness was very memorable.
Yeah. So if you haven't seen it, and Rescue Rangers is a lot of fun.
Yes.
If you like the original show.
Yeah, the new Disney Plus movie is great. But Star Trek.
Yep, Star Trek. No. For real though. Spock and Muck. Most recent episode just came out yesterday. The Freaky Friday was so much fun.
I gotta say, when they first found themselves in that dilemma, I rolled my eyes because I'm like, this is such a typical 80s sitcom plot, and there's no explanation for why it happened, and we'll never get one.
And just like Turnabout Intruder. Kirk and
that woman, right?
Yeah, they switch bodies because, like, there's a machine or whatever like that, because she's gonna become the first woman captain, because that wasn't allowed back then.
Doesn't mean I didn't enjoy the hijinks that ensued, but when it first happened, I was like, really? We're going there?
Here I thought it was. I got a kick out of what it is. Like, this feels so original series in the best way possible that I loved it.
That's a good way to put it. I hadn't thought of that.
What is her name? Who to bring? Gia Sandhu. Gia? Gia? Gia.
Is that the actor or the character?
That's the actress who plays T'Pring.
Oh, T'Pring. Yeah, okay.
Just does a phenomenal job, and she is now the definitive T'Pring. She has played T'Pring more than T'Pring, the original actor, has. So
that's impressive. Now, clearly, we know from the benefit of having watched other Star Trek that those two characters don't end up together.
That's true.
And I'm curious to see how that comes to pass.
I don't know if you're going to see it in Strange New Worlds.
Do I need to go back to TOS to see it?
It's kind of like it was a long thing over TOS and the movies, the films. And,
okay.
But I mean, basically, spoilers for if you haven't watched it 50 years ago. Nurse Chapel and Spock clearly have emotions for each other.
See, I never knew that until this podcast.
Gotcha.
Like, I knew it from the pilot episode of Strange New Worlds, but I didn't know it. Well, I knew it was one-sided at least in Strange New Worlds. I didn't know there was anything in TOS to back that up.
Yeah, Nurse Chapel is a bisexual disaster for Spock right now. Meanwhile, Ortega's over here smoothly trying to softly see if she wants to go on a date as well. Very softly, gentle poking. At least in my interpretation.
Wait, I'm sorry. Who did you just say is a disaster
Ortega,
by?
no, Chapel is bisexual or pan.
Okay. So at one point in Spock-Amok, that was my reading of the character as well. But then later on in that same episode, she said it would have to be the right guy.
Uh-huh.
And I took guy to be a gendered term.
She's had relationships with women, so she's bi.
Yeah, but I would have expected her to say it would have to be the right person.
So she didn't. She can prefer men, but date both. I mean, it's all about queer energy, how you present yourself. And here, yeah, she did say at the end she had to be the right guy. Doesn't mean she doesn't appreciate women. Maybe for that character, she sees herself with a guy. If she actually does settle.
Okay.
Yeah. Queerness is a very, very moldy, slimy thing.
That is not how I would describe it.
It goes all over the place. It can mold and squish and moldable, slimy, squishy thing in the most beautiful of ways.
It is nuanced and multifaceted.
Oh, it works too.
I will say I love the character of Nurse Chapel.
Much.
Yeah, I love how when she is good at something, she comes across as very confident. She has a grin on her face. She'll run through the ship and do something that she loves, and she boasts about, you don't have to tell me how good I am. But when she's unsure about something, she lets you know that too. She doesn't put on fake bluster. It's not like she has a fragile ego and is unwilling to admit when she doesn't know what's going on or what to do next. So it's this wonderful dichotomy that shows both confidence and fragility. And I don't mean that like in a feminine sense. I just mean like we're all fragile. We're all humans and we all break really easily. And her as a medical professional is very aware of that.
Yeah. The range we've seen on her is probably some of the most development we've seen on any of the characters so far.
Yes.
And I just love her for it. I want to see more Dr. Mbenga. Something's going to happen. Maybe his daughter is related where he's no longer CMO. Because he's not when McCoy is there. So
right, he's still on the Enterprise, but he's not chief.
Yeah, and maybe nothing happens. Maybe McCoy just outranks him.
Yep.
At that point, in whatever sense that might mean. So chief medical officer just means the one in charge. Doesn't mean that you're better or you got demoted either. It just means like, yeah. So. But I want to see more of him because I get a kick out of him and his warmness. He's just such a fun guy.
Yeah, I like his hat.
Oh my god, that was a great little quip at the beginning of the transporter room.
Mm-hmm.
And he mentions the nickname, and Una's like, "What?"
Yeah, and Chapel's like, "Mm-mm." Now, another character I want to say, I love. Is his name Ethan Peck, who plays Spock?
Yeah,
I love the character, and I think the actor's doing a great job. But it's very hard for me to see him as a character who grows up to be Leonard Nimoy.
Really?
Like this, I almost see this as just a different Spock, a different character, and that's fine. It doesn't like dilute it for me, but I just like I try to. I also just watched the motion picture in theaters last week.
Yeah.
It was the first time I'd seen it since before TNG premiered.
I wish I would have known before you would post it afterwards because I could have like gotten you prepared for it.
How would you have done that?
Because I did this for Shar as well. It's like motion picture is an experience more than anything else. It's a visual experience. Because if you've seen anything else since then, like it's a very slow movie. It is very slow, but it is a 2-hour episode. A 2-hour episode of original series. It is just like Insurrection is for TNG. But the way this is presented, it's a visual experience. It's and you just take it for what it is. motion picture, and a lot of people have trouble with that. So,
Well, I was somewhat prepared for that in two ways. One is I was aware that this movie came out around 2001: A Space Odyssey, which I've also seen, and that movie has more moments of silence than it does of dialogue, and so I understood that the motion picture was largely influenced by that as well. And also, the episode The Changeling from TOS is practically the same plot as the motion picture, and how some people have said Star Trek, where no Mad has gone before. So I was not disappointed or surprised by the motion picture. And I had seen it before, and I did remember some things, but this was probably like the last time I saw this movie, which was also the first time I'd seen it, was probably my introduction to all these characters. I'd probably never seen Spock or Kirk before the motion picture.
Wow.
And so now I'm seeing it really knowing who these characters are. And so I have this very recent impression of Leonard Nimoy just coming out of the Kolinar, or having not taken it to purge himself of all his emotions, very cold, very stoic. And then I go from that to watching Ethan Peck sitting across from Jess Bush at the dinner table getting smacked upside the head while asking for relationship advice. And that just seems very different.
For me, well, it is because he's much younger here, right? He's much younger. He's got to learn all those things to get to that point, and his experiences between now and end of the original series lead him to think like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna go through this Kolinar thing. He's so young now. Like even in Q&A when it's short trek, he is smiling and beaming when he comes onto the Enterprise. Something we don't see, and he's sitting here shouting to Una as a cadet. Like it was, or ensign, whatever he was at that point.
Yep.
A very different young Spock. And so see, I like seeing this journey of how he turns into molds into this to who we get in Star Trek 2009. That journey. He goes from this young, happy Spock to someone who tries to contain and hold his feelings, to someone who dies for loving Captain Kirk, and then is brought back to life, having to relearn everything, and then he becomes like an ambassador and tries to reunify Romulus and Vulcan. To he retires from being an ambassador, tries to save Romulus, believing this at the end so hard, and he ends up going to an alternate dimension, and so much in love with his friend Kirk that he helps an alternate dimension Kirk and Spock become friends and continue on that legacy. Like, oh, it's beautiful, and I like seeing that journey and what young Spock was before we even saw him in original series.
Thank you for recapping Spock's life. That's a useful context because it reminds me that the Spock we're seeing now is in some ways similar to very old Spock. It's almost like a bell curve where he goes from being emotional to being dry to being emotional again. And I wonder what motivates that hump in the middle, because in the canceled pilot with Captain Pike, he was laughing smiling when he was touching the flower. And I don't recall when or where I read this. Maybe it was an episode, maybe it was a book, but he said that the reason he smiled was because he was trying harder to fit in with a human crew. And maybe that was just an excuse that he was giving because he didn't want people to think he actually was human.
Well, there you go. New context. This is one who does not have those life experiences yet, who's still struggling with his trying to be Vulcan. We even saw it here in this episode, Spock and Muck, of him worrying that he wasn't Vulcan enough for his fiancée.
Which reminded me of Superman 3, when we saw Superman fighting Clark Kent. I thought that was a neat way to open this week's episode of Spock Unlocked, because we're supposed to see the human Spock in that dream as the Spock being attacked by the Vulcan. At least that's how it was originally portrayed to me. But then I thought, no, both of these are equally valid interpretations of this character. Like, one could kill the other, and it's no better than the other killing the one.
It's not a Tuvix situation here.
Tuvix. Oh, gosh.
I mean, Tuvix was a selfish one here, trying to say that Tuvok and Neelix. Oh wait, let's not talk about that.
I did a
one-
whole episode of that with Scott McNulty. I'm good. I've gotten out everything I needed to say.
We have not talked much about Captain Pike.
And his hair.
I love Captain Pike. I guess that means I also love his hair. But I love him so much as a captain. I loved him in Discovery Season 2, and I love him here. He is so warm, so ready to listen to his crew and listen to their weird outbursts, like Otega's, like, all right, dive, dive, dive into the ball, swirling ball of death. Like, he gets that, like, huh?
Yeah, I remember in Discovery when he showed up, he was like, hey, maybe we'll have some fun along the way. And he's consistent with that. Like, even I loved in Children of the Comet when he was asking for ideas and he got one. And he said, I like this idea. This is a good idea. Let's do it.
That's not what I said. Oh, that was Memento Mori.
Yeah. Although he does have breath to him at the end of Memento Mori when he's calling down for Hemmer and Uhura in the docking bay, and there's no response, and he very stoically says to send a recovery crew, and then they chime in. They say, we're still here. And he doubles over, puts his hands on his knees, and takes a deep breath.
Mm-hmm.
And it reminded me of when Burnham thought that Book had died at the end of season 4, and how she cried at first, but then she went right back into being the captain, which you and I have talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And in this, Kirk didn't even let the emotion show initially, but he was holding it in, and it wasn't until he found out that they were safe that he could show his human side.
Yeah, like we know Uhura was going to be fine as viewers. So that scene wasn't about her, wasn't about Hemmer. It was all showing Pike's emotion.
Right.
And his reaction to him. Because he doesn't know. He hasn't seen all these episodes.
Right. He knows his future. He doesn't know everybody else's.
Mm-hmm. I've liked that. They haven't touched on it much. We actually haven't seen a whole bunch of Pike outside of Memento Mori and the first episode here and there. But like, the show has been a lot more about the crew than him almost.
He was also a lot of the Children of the Comet, because that episode was about knowing your future.
Yeah, it's about just over half, but he hasn't been a major part, is what I'm trying to get to. Like as much as like Burnham is, or
yes,
is. They allow the crew room to breathe and have adventures as well, and I think that's great. But Pike is always there to help and support them in any way he can.
Was he wearing Captain Green this week?
He was wearing it.
And do you think that's only for like formal wear?
Oh, I don't know the answer to that, but it was just an intentional nod to Kirk's green uniform, occasional green uniform in TOS.
Oh yeah.
Let's put that here. Okay.
It was absolutely that. I'm just wondering if it's going to be a thing going forward.
You switch, interchange, whatever happens, whatever the costume designer gives you that week is what Kirk wore.
There have been so many Starfleet costumes.
Every show has its own uniform.
And yet they're all the same Starfleet.
Yep. Maybe, the fashion designers of the future are just very prolific, and they like to give everyone a little bit, a little chance at it.
Sure, why not? Hey, it's what do you think we should do differently? Knock yourself out.
What if we make this color more bold here and over in this, yeah.
Brilliant.
Brilliant.
So another thing I questioned was when they revealed that number 1 is Illyrian, which means that she has been genetically enhanced. This means we have 2 genetically enhanced people on the bridge. I didn't expect them to have that many. Usually, like, we knew going in that Khan was going, or sorry, not Khan, Noonien Singh was going to be genetically enhanced, and then number 1 was like, oh yeah, me too.
Do we know she is?
Who?
Or you implied La'an?
I mean, technically, you're right. She is descended from somebody who's genetically enhanced. She herself is not.
So she might be, might not, but she just has the legacy.
Yes, and also.
Okay, I thought I missed something. Okay.
No, I don't think you did. But she did point out that, like, with a name like mine, you get made fun of a lot as a kid or whatever. If that's the only thing that she was getting made fun of, I mean, I if she is not, do you think she's proud of her last name? Let me start there.
She's not giving me any indication that she is proud of it.
Yeah, me neither. But I'm wondering, like, if she doesn't want to be associated with that. Like, I know people who grow up and they never really had a close connection with their parents, and they don't want to have, like, especially if their parents got divorced, and they're like, I don't want to have my dad's last name anymore. He's not even part of the family anymore. So they changed their last name. So if she feels that way about Khan, her ancestor, I could imagine that she could change her last name and not be so obviously descended from someone who caused a eugenics war. So I'm impressed that she has held on to the name, is what I'm saying.
She has showed us in multiple episodes that she doesn't care what others think.
There's that.
Like, or at least that's her cover story anyway.
Yeah.
So to me, it's not surprising. But you're right, a lot of people do. I mean, there's still people who are related to Hitler out there.
Yeah, that's true.
So, I don't know. I honestly don't remember. I read about him before, but I don't remember if they kept the name or changed it. I think they've changed it. But they exist out there still.
Yeah.
I think some of them even live here in the U.S. somewhere. But in any case, like, yeah, but in her case, La'an, she's like, I don't care what anyone thinks. Whether she's lying to herself, I'm guessing with that. But, yeah, she has some things to work out still.
Yeah. I mean, again, this is one of those disconnects where what I would do in a situation is different from what somebody else would do, because she seems very good at putting up that barrier, that shell, or simply not caring or being as influenced. Whereas me, it's not that I want to be loved and accepted, but I really don't want to be hated. You know, like if I was ever subjected to the kind of internet hate that some people get, I wouldn't sleep for weeks. You know, I can't just turn off the computer and walk away.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so kudos to her for being made of sterner stuff than I am.
I love number one's like being a caretaker mother figure for her. I love that relationship, and even like at the end when they're signing their names on the plating, like holding the back of her arm as they watch the solar ship fly by. Like, oh, it's just beautiful and sweet.
Is that the first time we've seen a solar ship since DS9?
Yes.
Awesome. I like that.
The bar. What was Barjan? I don't remember. The not Remoran. No, Barjan was the Vulcan. Who
Are you talking about the Lucky Barge in Discovery?
People who had the solar ship, remote, whatever they were. I love their little bit of they try to empathize with you, and so they act like you. And Pike figured it out. Like I kind of figured that out too.
The Rongovians.
Yeah, Rongovians. Thank you. Ron. That's what I think about. Like, sure, put an apostrophe everywhere. Do they like ask you like where do you put the apostrophe? But anyway, I got a kick out of that. I kind of figured it out too. I was surprised that April hadn't. But like when you're seeing them angry yelling at the
Tellarites, yeah.
Yeah, the Tellarites, and then all of a sudden they're like being very logical with Spock, and I'm like, oh, I see what they're doing right away. Or being very warm with once they were doing the logical thing, that's when it hit me because they were being very warm and friendly with Christopher.
When you said it hit you, like you figured it out, did you come to the same conclusion Pike did?
Yeah.
Huh. So when Pike told them, "Oh, I don't think you should join the Federation," you knew what he was doing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Huh. Well, kudos to you for being made of smarter stuff than I am.
No, I just figured it out. It's not necessarily smarter.
I know. I'm just kidding.
You were with Admiral April, who did not catch it. Who now that actor is now the definitive version, and instead of James Doohan as Admiral April.
Well, Robert April only appeared in one animated show, right?
Yep. So now we've seen him twice, and so now we have a person who has been him more.
I remember the person who created that character for the animated series. He's on Twitter, and I'm sorry I don't remember his name, but he tweeted, he's like, 47 years ago, I created Robert April for an animated series. Tonight, I get to see him come to life.
That's awesome.
I mean, who anticipates their work having that kind of effect? Like, a couple of years ago, somebody took a BBS door game, if you know what that is, that I wrote back in 95, and they sent me a screenshot of it running on Telnet. Like they had modified the code to run over the internet instead of dial-up. And this was 25 years later on an Apple II. And I didn't expect that. It didn't have the sort of profound effect that Robert April has already, being seen by millions of people. Who knows if anybody will ever play my game. But it was still nonetheless to think, wow, I did something 25 years ago, and somebody else is aware of it and working with it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's kind of neat to have Picard says, I'm not a man who needs a legacy. Well, too bad, Picard, because you have one. And kudos to you for earning it.
Oh, I found out why when around the time Majel Barrett died. Majel Barrett Roddenberry. There was talk about her recording the voice so they could use it in the future, but we haven't really heard it since then. Turns out that they discovered that there's a lot of syllables missing still, so they couldn't really reasonably use it. But since then, technology and deep fake voicing has gotten improved, so they might be able to again at some point in the future if they ever choose to. Just a random side, because I think we talked about this in the past, and that's why it made me think of it now.
The only concern that I might be aware of is it might be cheaper to just hire a sound-alike.
Oh, absolutely. I'm just, I think I'm just kind of bringing something full circle. I think we talked about like maybe sometime in the last 5 years.
Yes.
Whatever. And then I just something sparked my memory as I was looking through the cast list.
Yeah.
And the last person we really haven't talked about much is Ortegas.
Yes.
I love so much. Ortegas is so much fun, and I'm very gay for her.
Yeah, I'm sure we will get an episode about her because...
Oh yeah, she's got to do her little swashbuckle thing.
Swashbuckle?
In the preview, there's her doing a fencing thing or sword fighting.
Oh.
I have no context beyond that. But I'm like, cool, I'm ready.
I don't think I knew that. I'll be keeping an eye out for that. But yeah, she is clearly not disrespectful. That's not the word I'm looking for, but not non-traditional. But like I love the way she speaks to the captain. I love the way she hazed Uhura. I love the way when Uhura showed up and Pike laughed.
Uh-huh.
I'm like,
gotcha.
Yeah. Dress uniform. Come on in.
Informal.
Mm-hmm.
Informal. I think is that the word you're looking for?
Yes, I think it is. Thank you. I like how informal Ortegas is.
Yeah, she's so much fun.
Yeah.
I mean, clearly young and still gets nervous, especially but when they're about the life-threatening situation with the Gorm, who I love their ships and the way they act, by the way. I love that blinking communication thing. But yeah, I get a kick out of her little fly gal attitude.
Oh, speaking of the Gorn, when they showed the code for their light signals, I paused it because, well, actually, first I had to rewind it because when they first showed it, the only letter I saw was H. And there are only two letters I know in Morse code, and they're H and I.
Uh-huh. Oh, it's I.
Right. And the H in Gorn is the same as in Morse.
Oh, that was totally for you.
I'm like, I rewound it. I was like, wait, the Gorn aren't actually using Morse code, are they? So I rewound it. I paused that frame, looked at all the letters. It's not Morse code. Like that one letter just happens to be exactly the same.
Might be based on maybe they changed a bunch of dots or something like that. Or it could have been. It probably was one of the things they wanted for people who do pause it. It's like, oh.
I mean, there were some letters that were similar to Morse, but that was the only one that was identical.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
With the first episode of Strange New Worlds, called Strange New Worlds, one of the guys who worked on the show did a translation. Because at the end of the episode, or even in number one's cell, there was text in the background, written in chalk, and then at the end when they showed them like after the discovery that other people live are in the universe, there's aliens in the universe that had like medical diagrams and things like that, or technical diagrams. They translated all the things, and it was just a fun little neat like thing. Like they actually made up all the quote unquote language. It was one of the symbol means symbol thing, but it was kind of fun just to see this little thing. And your most Morse code type thing made me think of that.
Were there any interesting messages hidden in that episode?
The first one was the most something like how the government is going to kill us all, or something like that with their war. Something like that. Like these people who are. It was a government protest, scrawling. The rest were all just technical things like dorsal fin or.
So very similar to the world that we now find ourselves in.
Yes.
Awesome. Parallel development. Gotta love it.
Uhura. We haven't really talked a lot about Uhura, but I like seeing this younger version of her as she's learning things, and I like that little bit at the beginning of the hazing was fun, but finding her place in the world and also kind of adding some context for her engineering knowledge in the later series, and her singing. We know she can sing because she does that in the original series. Things like that. And so kind of like seeing some background, tying it in without like saying, hitting over the head, saying, bam, bam, here is the exact explanation for this one episode, season 2 episode, whatever.
Yeah, our friend TJ is a filmmaker. And one of the things he taught me is that the way you show somebody else's capability isn't by demonstrating it themselves, but by showing how other people react to it. And the example he gave me was in Avengers Endgame when Thanos' ship is raining fire on all the people on the ground, because that's where all the superheroes are, like dozens and dozens of Marvel superheroes. And then the fire stops raining and they redirect all the cannons at Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel hasn't even shown up yet. And at that point, it doesn't matter what she does, because what you know about Captain Marvel is being told to you by how Thanos' ship is reacting.
Yes.
And I've since seen this in other shows now that TJ's made me aware of it, like in the movie Nobody. I won't go into detail, but I thought that was a fun film. Kind of the same thing here, where it's not like Uhura is impressing us all by rapidly switching languages and translating when we need translation. This is not quite on the same scale as what I just described in the Marvel movie, but when Pike says, I understand you know 12 languages, and she says, actually, it's 37. And all the conversation in the room stops, and they all turn and look at her. And like, without that, you might just think, oh, 37, that's cool. But when you see how other people react, and you're like, that's even in the future, that's a lot. And so I thought that was a really memorable moment, clearly.
I love those things that someone points out to you that when you see it, it adds to like, oh, and just like that, like how everyone else reacts.
Yeah. Yeah, I will drop a link in the show notes for this episode on transporterlock.com, a link to the scene in Nobody. It's in the tattoo parlor. If you've seen the movie, it's that scene. It really shows you how dangerous the main character is, and all he's doing is standing there. He's not throwing punches. He's not holding weapons. It's just how other people are reacting to him.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. Anything else about Strange New Worlds?
I mean, I've already said everything. I love it. I am enjoying this so much, and I look very much forward to the next 5 episodes.
And we're already half done.
Yeah, it's disappointing. There's only 10 episodes. I think that's my disappointment with the series.
Yeah, I mean, you and I are recording this on June 3rd, and the show premiered on May 5th. So it's been less than a month, and we're already half done. Sad.
That's been less than a month.
Yeah. One other thing, not about Strange New Worlds, but about Star Trek. I walked into the post office yesterday wearing my gay Starfleet logo shirt, and the mail clerk from whom I was buying stamps said, "Oh, Starfleet, huh?" And I thought it was interesting they said Starfleet and not Star Trek, because clearly he understood what the logo represented. And I said to him, "Oh, you a Star Trek fan?" He's like, "I'm not just a fan. I have its tattoos all over my body." And I said, "I'm not going to ask you where." He's like, "No, you can." I was like, "Okay, where?" And he rolls up his sleeve and he has some logos tattooed on his upper arm. And then he goes on to say that before he was a postal clerk, he was a makeup artist. And the company that he worked for put in a bid to work on Deep Space Nine. And unfortunately, that they were outbid or underbid. And so instead, he went and worked on 2 seasons of Stargate SG-1.
Nice.
Now, I did not happen to catch his name badge. So I looked up in the IMDb, and there are makeup people for SG-1 listed there. None of the names ring a bell because I don't know what this guy's name was. But he did say, I asked him what he thought about the new Star Treks, and he said that he loves the character of Michael Burnham, and he wishes that the other characters she interacts with were written as well as she is. And he
Totally
doesn't
see
feel
that.
that that's the case.
Uh-huh. When you
But
said, when you started that story, it was saying like, when you asked him what you were going to say, not only am I Starfleet, I'm a member, or whatever you're going.
I'm also the president.
Yeah.
No, I've had the pleasure of interacting with a variety of postal clerks because I go to the post office quite often, sometimes buying literally thousands of dollars worth of stamps for some of my other endeavors. And they all have interesting life stories. They've all done very different things. And this person happened to be a Stargate makeup artist.
That's amazing.
Yeah, small world. Well, then, I think that's the end for this episode. We will be back to talk about episodes 6 through 10
In
sometime.
5 weeks.
Yeah, the 10th and final episode of this season airs on July 7th. So we will be chatting sometime in July. That's the next planned episode of Transporter Lock. Who knows what might happen between now and then, but yeah. And in the meantime, listeners can look forward to next week's episode, Lift Us Where Suffering Cannot Reach.
Where we belong.
Which sounds more like a Discovery title as opposed to Spock-a-Mock, which is a very fun name for this week's very fun episode.
Sounds like an 80s song to me.
Spock-a-Mock?
Where we belong.
Oh, Lift Us Up Where Suffering Cannot Reach, yes. Except a little bit darker, maybe.
Fly
Cool.
away.
All right. Sabriel, remind our listeners where they can find you on the internets.
At Dame Sabriel or Sabriel.gay.
Love it. Links to those are in our bios at transporterlock.com. I'm at Gamebits, and of course, at Transporterlock is our podcast Twitter account. Until next time.
Hit it.
If you've enjoyed this episode, please leave a review on iTunes and keep your hailing frequencies open by following us on Twitter at TransporterLock or subscribing to our podcast and email newsletter at transporterlock.com.